What if the biggest financial agreement in the world was never signed in a room, but silently accepted over generations? Every nation promises its people the same thing: prosperity, stability, and growth. When money runs short, leaders say borrowing is temporary, a bridge to the future, a necessary sacrifice. Yet look around. National debts don't shrink after crises, they explode. Emergency loans become permanent obligations. And the rules never seem to change, no matter who's elected. So here's the puzzle. If borrowing is supposed to solve problems, why does it never end? And if debt is dangerous, why does the global system reward those who accumulate the most of it? Tonight, we're uncovering the hidden deal that keeps nations borrowing forever, a deal so embedded in modern finance that most people don't even realize it exists. Setting the stage, the promise of safe borrowing. To understand the deal, we need to go back to a time when borrowing was feared. For most of history, rulers avoided debt. Loans were risky. Creditors could demand territory, power, or political influence in return. Default often meant collapse. So when modern financial systems emerged, they sold a revolutionary idea: safe, manageable, sovereign debt. Governments would borrow in their own currency. Central banks would manage interest rates. Institutions would ensure stability. This wasn't just financial innovation, it was a political breakthrough. Debt was no longer a threat. It was framed as a tool of progress. But beneath that promise was a quiet condition: borrowing would never truly end. Origins: when temporary became permanent, the roots of this deal lie in the rise of central banking and bond markets. In the 18th and 19th centuries, governments discovered they could issue bonds, long-term promises to repay investors with interest. Instead of repaying and ending the debt, they could roll it over. Old debt was replaced with new debt. At first, this seemed harmless. Economies grew. Tax bases expanded. Everyone assumed future growth would handle the bill. Then wars arrived. World conflicts forced governments to borrow on unprecedented scales. Afterward, instead of resetting, they normalized debt. Institutions were created to manage it: central banks, treasuries, international lenders. And that's when the deal took shape. Governments would never fully repay. Creditors would never demand full repayment. The system would continue as long as borrowing continued. The era of structured dependence. After World War II, the deal went global. New institutions emerged to stabilize nations and encourage development. Loans were offered not just to rebuild, but to integrate countries into a shared financial framework. Here's where cause and effect become critical. To borrow, countries had to meet conditions. To meet conditions, they had to reshape policy. To maintain access, they had to keep borrowing. Debt became less about funding projects and more about maintaining membership in the system. For wealthy nations, this meant endless refinancing. For poorer nations, it meant permanent adjustment. Either way, exit wasn't an option. Why? Because the system was designed so that stopping borrowing caused collapse faster than continuing it. The breaking point: when paying back becomes impossible eventually, the numbers outpaced reality. Debt grew faster than economies. Interest compounded. Refinancing replaced repayment. At this stage, something critical happened. Debt stopped being measured by whether it could be repaid and started being judged by whether it could be serviced. As long as payments continued, the system considered it sustainable. This changed the entire meaning of responsibility. A nation didn't need to escape debt, just needed to stay functional within it. And that's the trap, because raising rates threatens default. Lowering rates inflates bubbles. So policies are shaped not around citizens, but around creditors. Fallout: the cost of never leaving. The fallout of endless borrowing isn't sudden collapse. It's slow erosion. Public spending shifts from services to interest payments. Governments prioritize market confidence over domestic stability. Economic decisions are filtered through debt sustainability models. And during crises, the pattern is predictable. Borrow more to survive. Promise reform. Return to borrowing. Each cycle deepens dependency. What looks like sovereignty on paper becomes constraint in practice. Failed fixes: why escape plans fail over time. Leaders propose escape routes: austerity, Debt restructuring, growth-led repayment, monetary expansion, fixed target symptoms, not structure. Austerity shrinks economies. Growth fuels new borrowing. Monetary fixes inflate assets. Restructuring resets numbers, but not incentives. The deal remains untouched. Why? Because the global system is built on the assumption that debt will always exist and always roll forward. Breaking that assumption threatens everyone invested in it. Modern parallels, the pattern repeats today. Global debt sits at historic highs. Advanced economies refinance trillions annually. Emerging nations juggle currencies, conditions, and confidence. And digital tools promise efficiency while reinforcing oversight. The language changes. Structure doesn't. Borrowing is framed as stimulus. Dependence is framed as cooperation. Control is framed as stability. The deal renews itself every time a crisis hits. Takeaways: what the deal really is. First, the system isn't broken, it's working as designed. Permanent borrowing sustains permanent leverage. Second, debt endurance matters more than debt freedom. Survival within the system is rewarded. Exit is punished. Third, financial sovereignty erodes not through force, but through normalization. Final warning: the unanswered question, the hidden deal, was never voted on. But it shapes every budget, every bailout, every future promise. The question isn't whether nations will keep borrowing, it's whether people will recognize the cost before alternatives disappear. Because systems built on endless obligation rarely offer genuine freedom. Call to action if this story changed how you view national debt and global finance. Subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden mechanics of power. Share this video with someone who believes debt is just temporary. Remember, the most binding agreements aren't always signed. Sometimes they're inherited.